The federal government has announced the reopening of 47 unity schools that were previously closed owing to security concerns. The Ministry of Education disclosed this decision on Thursday as a reflection of the government's commitment to protecting students and ensuring that education continues uninterrupted across the country. To legislative matters, the Senate has confirmed all 64 ambassadorial nominees after a routine screening. The report by the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs led by Senator Sani Bello was adopted without objection until Senator Sahabi Yao flagged the absence of a nominee from Zamfara State. Senate President Godswill Akpabio acknowledged the oversight, assuring that more nominations will follow and Zamfara would be included. For now, the Senate remains unrepresented, or the state rather remains unrepresented, with only a promise of a nominee yet to come. And President Bola Tinubu has formally informed the House of Representatives of his plans to present the 2026 Appropriation Bill to a joint session of the National Assembly. The letter was read on the floor of the House on Thursday by the Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas. According to the communication, the President will present the budget proposal on Friday at 2 p.m. in his capacity as the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The presentation officially kicks off the 2026 budget process, setting the stage for lawmakers to scrutinize the government's spending and revenue plans before approval. In the meantime, the Senate has approved the 2026 to 2028 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, making a key change to the oil price benchmark. While most of the president's projections were retained, the Senate reduced the 2026 oil benchmark from $64.85 a barrel to $60 per barrel, citing global instability, especially in the Middle East and Europe. Presenting the report, the Finance Committee Chairman, Senator Sani Musa, said the adjustment was necessary to reflect market risks. The benchmark rises to $65 a barrel in 2027. However, the lawmakers maintained the oil production target at 1.84 million barrels per day and the exchange rate at 1,512 to the dollar.
The projected crude oil benchmark prices of 64.85, 64.30, and 65.50 US dollars per barrel for 2026, 2027, and 2028 respectively be reduced to $60 for 2026, $65 for 2027, and $70 for 2028. This is in recognition of the global geopolitical tensions in Europe and the Middle East and the sensitivity of global crude oil prices. The framework for revenue and expenses, the 2026 federal government budget proposed spending, which stands at 54.46 trillion, of which 34.33 trillion is federal government retail revenue. New borrowings stood at 17.88 trillion, which constitute both domestic and foreign borrowings. Debt service was valued at 15.52 trillion. Pensions, gratuities, and retirees' benefits stood at 1.376 trillion. And fiscal deficit at 20.13 trillion be sustained.
I think this has been a very patriotic move in order to allow for immediate free flow of the budget proposals for 2026 to be presented to us by Mr. President. I thank you all, and I hope that these projections may be realistic, should be realistic, will be realistic, shall be realistic, for the purpose of ensuring that the renewable agenda of Mr. President and the economic indices.
Well, let's look at a breakdown of this expenditure framework, what the Senate revised and what was proposed by the executive. Now, some of these things were adjusted owing to, as they say, to global geopolitical tensions. As the crude oil benchmark was adjusted, the benchmark was put at, the Senate approved finally a $60 per barrel, while what the government proposed was $64.85 per barrel. Now, in 2027, remember this document is to cover 2026 to 2028. But in 2027, the government proposed $64.3 per barrel, but the Senate revised it to $65 per barrel. For 2028, the government, the executive, proposed $65.50 per barrel, but the Senate adjusted it to $70 per barrel. Now, that's for the crude oil benchmark. Now, going on down to the crude oil production, for 2026, it was left at 1.84 million barrels per day. The exchange rate was set at $1,512 naira to the dollar, and the inflation rate was set at 16.5%. GDP growth rate was set at 4.68%. Now, there were a few adjustments. For 2027, the crude oil production was set at 1.88 million barrels per day. Exchange rate was set at 1,432.15 naira to the dollar. Inflation was dropped to 13%, and GDP growth rate was put at 5.96%. In 2028, again, there are a few more adjustments. Brent production was put at 1,901.92 million barrels per day. Exchange rate was dropped further to 1,383.18 naira to the dollar. Inflation rate was dropped further to 9%, and the GDP growth was set at 7.9%. There are a lot of other breakdowns. The fiscal framework, the numbers, the government 2026 federal budget snapshot, total proposed expenditure was put at 54.46 trillion naira. Now, in the area of revenue, retained revenue and deficit, retained revenue was 33.33 trillion naira, and fiscal deficit was put at 20.13 trillion, and new borrowings were set at 17.88 trillion naira. But in terms of expenditure breakdown, we see 20.131 trillion naira. Recurrent for capital, recurrent was put at 15.265 trillion, and debt servicing was put at 15.52 trillion. Statutory transfers 3.152, pensions and gratuities were put at 1.376 trillion naira, and sinking fund was put at 388.54 billion naira. Special interventions, recurrent was put at 200 billion, and capital was put at 14 billion naira. This is all a breakdown, but we do have in the studio to help us make sense of all of these figures an economist and the Vice President of the Irish Nigeria Business Association, Mr. Aliyu Audu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
When we look at this document, you see the adjustments that the Senate had made to, for instance, the benchmark, the oil benchmark, price benchmark at what government proposing 64.85 and Senate revising that to 60. They did a few other adjustments. From your perspective, was that a good decision to have made?
Absolutely, that's a good decision because of the volatility in the oil sector. Now, there's always the possibility that there could be an increase as well as a reduction. So, putting it at 64, I think will be too ambitious by the government. And in order to be safe, I think 60 was the right place for the
benchmark to be placed.
For the benchmark to be placed at, looking at historical figures, of course.
Thank you. But if you, knowing that there's a lot of tension across, political tensions and border tensions across the world, especially in security, I didn't want to use the word security,
fine.
Especially when it comes to the oil producing nations.
Yes.
One would wonder that if the benchmark was reduced, why leave the production target at that same number?
Well, that is also a mistake because now, given the level of insecurities that can happen and a lot of volatility in oil production, like what is going on right now in terms of, Dangote and yes, and so on and so forth, I think is a bit too ambitious to leave it at 1.8 because usually there are volatilities that could be caused as a result of political tensions, insecurity, so on and so forth. So I think to be, I think they should play safe, and they should have possibly lowered it to about 1.6 to be on the safe side.
But you see, from what the lawmakers have said, it looks as if everything around Nigeria's economy, especially as it has to do with the oil and gas sector, is, well, dependent on what goes on in the international space. Because they cited global events, particularly situations in the Middle East and Europe, as the reasons for these adjustments. So one would then wonder, at what point would Nigeria begin to plan its economy, expenditure and revenue and all of that around what it can manage? Does Nigeria continue to depend? Should Nigeria continue to depend on
international shocks?
Yes.
Well, it's not entirely true, because they have to make allowance for local shocks. Anything can happen within the Nigerian economy, and especially, as I said before, insecurity, anything can happen. So they should have made some allowance, at least reduce it by 1 or 2 percentage points, and brought it down to about 1.6, because anything can happen. Right now, we have a lot of international things happening.
If you don't mind, just hold your thoughts. We'll just go on a quick break. We'll come back and pick it up from where you left.
No problem.
Please stay with us. Welcome back. We're still discussing the approval of the medium-term expenditure framework by the Senate, and we're looking at how all of the parameters and some of the parameters that the legislators put out there could have been changed. We're talking earlier about what the legislators cited. Global events, particularly the Middle East, and Europe. And my question to you was, is it not possible to plan? Look at some of this, use the local parameters to determine how our economy is going to look, meaning going forward. Is it that nothing happens locally that affects our economy?
I think that is far from the truth, because we also have to look at historical figures and historical happenings in the Nigerian economy. You can't be so confident in our security infrastructure, let the truth be told, and think that, okay, apart from security, there are mishaps that can come up, busting of pipes, underproduction, servicing of production pipes, so on and so forth. So you can't say throughout the whole year the production will remain at 1.8 million barrels. You have to be very conservative and make allowances for disruptions. Nothing is certain, especially not the local economy anyway. So at least there should be some allowance in case of any disruption, which could be security or even breakdown of machinery that could affect production, or natural factors, weather, so on and so forth. So they should have made some allowances and brought it down to, at least 1.6.
I like the fact that you brought in weather. Nigeria's weather conditions and climate such that is somewhat stable. So there are very few people who even consider Nigeria's climate as an issue that should be considered when you're looking at planning expenditure and revenue for the country.
You see, no matter how stable the Nigerian economy is, you're dealing with the climate you're dealing with machinery. Whether it's very hot, very cold, rainy, there is always the possibility of a machinery breaking down and affecting production. And this has happened in the past, or servicing of machineries. So you can't just say that a machinery will keep producing 100% for the year. You can't say that. You always have to make provisions for or to accommodate, unexpected circumstances.
Okay, let's leave that and come back to the things that have been projected. Given the projected GDP growth rate of 4.68% in 2026, rising to 7.9% in 2028, do you think these targets are achievable?
It's achievable, but are we on that path? I don't think so, because we are not really investing a lot in production. Remember, GDP is the total number of goods and services produced in the country. And I don't see us, I think we're being too ambitious at 7%. If you look at historical figures, we've been moving between 3 and 4%, at most 5%, but I don't see any any indices in the budget or any stimulants that can tell me that there's going to be a major growth in the economy, especially when we're not catering for agriculture and manufacturing, which is what is going to move us forward.
When you even look at it from that side, I'm seeing that in this document there's going to be fresh borrowings of about 18 trillion naira.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, would that make any difference in, maybe that's what will make the difference in the growth rate of the GDP? If 18 trillion naira is brought in and sunk into the Nigerian economy, maybe that will make a difference.
Well, so far that has not been the case. We have been borrowing in previous years, and that has not led to growth. And don't forget, if you borrow, you're also going to have to pay back. You're borrowing in one hand, and your debt service is going to increase. For example, now we are paying about 15 trillion. About 30% of the budget is going to be used to pay back loans. So that's not necessarily a good thing. And what is this borrowing going to be used for? I have not seen specifics, but I have not seen any ambitious investment in the real sector, manufacturing to create jobs, agriculture, solid minerals, so on and so forth. I've not really seen. So I think that's a very, very ambitious figure to have, because given historical data, I've not seen anything that is being done too differently.
Okay.
Let the truth be told.
Let the truth be told.
Yeah.
But let's look at this matter. I mean, okay, so the president, for instance, tomorrow is going to be presenting the 2026 budget to the National Assembly. There are those who are concerned here that 2024 budget is still running.
Yeah.
A portion of the 2025 budget is still running as well. And we're going to present the 2026 budget proposal to the National Assembly. That means there are going to be 3 budgets running concurrently.
Yeah.
Where has that happened? I mean, Nigeria is always a first at a lot of things. But what does that say of the state of the management of the Nigerian economy?
I think we have to, first of all, ensure that there has to be a mandate that a budget has to be utilized, meaning at least 90% of the budget has to be achieved. If you don't, and then you're moving to another budget, and then you don't achieve that, and you're moving to the third one, I don't think is a very good thing. So for fiscal responsibility, I think we have to ensure, legislators, along with the executive, have to ensure, pass laws that at least 90% of the budget has to be achieved, because what then happens is that there are lots of projects that are not done, and either monies are being returned or monies are not utilized. And given the current rate of the economy, what we are seeing, food is, we're not really producing. We're still import dependent in terms of food. That's not a very good thing. We should be moving towards self-sufficiency right now in a lot of things.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aliyu Audu is an economist and Vice President, Irish Nigeria Business Association. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staying with the legislature, the House of Representatives says all treaties, agreements, and memorandums of understanding signed by the federal government will now face legislative review to protect Nigeria's interest and sovereignty. The chairman of the House Committee on Treaties, Protocols and Agreements, Rabiu Yusuf, told journalists in Abuja that many past agreements lacked the proper oversight. He warned that some deals include risky arbitration clauses, hidden obligations, sovereignty waivers, and financial burdens unknown to the public.
This review, which we are about to start, is not a political witch hunting. We are just trying to correct the wrongs. We are trying to see how we can protect, the best way to protect the interests of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is a patriotic call, constitutional and essential for Nigerian sovereignty, debt sustainability, and economic security. We are facing a lot of problems in Nigeria. Nigeria has signed numerous treaties, memorandum of understanding, agreements, many without adequate oversight for the National Assembly, or domestications or monitoring. Some agreement we observe contain hidden obligations, sovereignty waivers, unfavorable arbitration clause, or financial risks unknown to Nigerians.
Staying with the legislature, the House of Representatives has approved amendments to the Electoral Act that will allow the electronic transmission of election results from polling units to the INEC results viewing portal in real time. This will allow the transmission to happen simultaneously with the physical collation of results, ensuring faster and more transparent reporting. Our House of Representatives correspondent Idong Joseph reports that this amendment and 21 others were approved after a detailed clause-by-clause consideration by the Committee of the Whole.
We've seen the errors. We want to move that we will step down to allow us to review and come back to you with the...
Shortly after stepping down consideration of the 2026 to 2028 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper report from the Committee of the Whole, which the House had earlier resolved into, the House for the second time resolved into the Committee of the Whole to consider a report from its Committee on Electoral Matters. The report, a bill for an act to repeal the Electoral Act of 2022 and enact a new electoral bill, and for related matters, is intended to guide the conduct of future elections.
In course of our assignment,
to commence the clause-by-clause consideration of about 58 affected clauses of the Electoral Act of 2022, the long title of the bill was first considered and adopted for amendments.
What we are doing is we are amending the Electoral Act. We're not repealing. If you are repealing, it means you are setting aside the law.
Measuring tape. I won't bring measuring tape.
So what we are doing is amending. That's the correct caption.
Shouldn't be repealing and enacting. So, long title, as amended, carried?
carried.
A proposal to allow the electronic transmission of election results from each polling unit to the IREF portal in real time, a controversial issue during the 2023 general elections, was adopted after diverse opinions were expressed by lawmakers.
The presiding officer shall electronically transmit the results from each unit to the IREF portal in real time and such transmission shall be done simultaneously with the physical collation of results to the world level.
That's 60 sub 6. My concern is the electoral officer is punished by this clause. But what about the beneficiary of this negligence? I think the candidate of that party should also be punished.
Following further considerations, the House also approved the proposal limiting the jurisdiction of pre-election matters to the Federal High Court in the state where the dispute arises, as well as the Federal Capital Territory. After considering about 22 clauses, further consideration of the report was deferred until the next legislative day for continuation. In Abuja for News Central, Idong Joseph.
We'll take a moment and we'll be back to continue the news. Do stay with us. The federal government has secured the release of 11 Nigerian Air Force pilots and crew members 9 days after their detention in Burkina Faso following intensive diplomatic engagement. The release came shortly after a high-level Nigerian delegation led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Toga, met the Burkinabe authorities in Ouagadougou, including President Ibrahim Traoré. Speaking after the meeting, the minister highlighted Nigeria and Burkina Faso's long-standing ties and shared security concerns, describing the engagement as a step toward reinforcing mutual understanding and neighborly relations. Ambassador Toga also distanced the federal government from remarks made by a Nigerian political party official alleging maltreatment of Nigerian military personnel in Burkina Faso. He reaffirmed Nigeria's commitments to sustained dialogue, regional solidarity, and enhanced cooperation with Burkina Faso and other sub-regional partners to address shared security challenges. And on to politics, the 3 People's Democratic Party lawmakers in the House of Representatives and 1 member from the Labour Party have officially announced their defection to the All Progressives Congress. The defecting lawmakers are Awaji Inambek Abiante, representing Andoni Opobo Nkoro Federal Constituency, Boma Goodhead, representing Akuku Toru, Asari Toru Federal Constituency, and Ameregwa Boniface, representing Emohia Ikwere Federal Constituency, all from the People's Democratic Party. Also defecting is Umezurike Munachim, who left the Labour Party for the APC. He represents Port Harcourt Federal Constituency, Port Harcourt 1 Federal Constituency. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Abbas Tajuddin, read their letters of defection on the floor of the House, stating that their decision to leave their former parties was due to prolonged and unresolved internal crisis.
Yours sincerely signed, Ray Boma Goodhead. Honorable members, my dear sister from the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the campaign to All Progressive Congress, APC. His message: I write to formally resign my membership from the People's Democratic Party, PDP, with immediate effect, owing to the protracted, irreconcilable, and current multiple court challenges involving the party. Consequent upon the above, I hereby decamp from the PDP to formally join the All Progressive Congress, APC, with immediate effect.
Now, there's been some number of defections from the, to the ruling APC in a number of years between 2021 and date. Now, defections of lawmakers from Rivers State between 2021 to date. In September 2021, Chisom Dike, member of the House of Representatives representing Tai Eleme Oyibo Federal Constituency, defected from the PDP to the APC. In December 2023, 27 Rivers State House of Assembly members, led by Martin Amewole, then Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, defected from the PDP to the APC during a plenary session. The group cited divisions within the PDP as the reason for their move. Among the factional defectors were key assembly members aligned with Nesum, the former governor Nesum Wike, who has a political bloc. But on December the 5th, 2025, we saw the official resignation of these same number of the official resignation of Martin Amewole, Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, from the PDP and moving on to the APC. The Deputy Speaker, Dumle Mao, also defected to the APC. Major Jack Akukutoro defected from the PDP to the APC. Linda Stewart Okrika defected to the APC. Franklin Wabuchi Ogba Egbema Andoni defected to the APC. Azero Opara Port Harcourt 3 defected also to the APC. And the list goes on and on and on, all the way down to Arnold Dennis Ogubolu defected, Chimeze Nwankwo, Gerald Ofoji, and Ofix Kabang all defected to the APC from the PDP. Well, moving on to the judiciary, a Federal Capital Territory High Court sitting in Gwarimpa, Abuja, has ordered a former Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, to continue on the administrative bail earlier granted by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. Delivering the ruling, Justice Miriam Hassan upheld the bail but imposed additional conditions. The court directed Dr. Ngige to produce a surety who is a director in the federal government service who owns a landed property. The surety is also required to deposit the title documents of the property and travel documents with the court, pending the conclusion of efforts to retrieve Dr. Ngige's international passport. The EFCC had earlier granted the former minister bail on self-recognizance with a directive that he submit his travel documents and provide one surety. Dr. Ngige, a former Anambra State governor, had been remanded at the Kuje Correctional Center following his arraignment. He is facing an 8-count charge bordering on alleged corrupt practices involving about 2.2 billion naira.
In his wisdom and exercise of his discretion,
thought it fit to allow the defendant to be on bail. Now, when you say administrative bail, it's not administrative, it's court bail. All that the court said was that the terms that were in the EFCC administrative bail will continue. That is to say, all that the defendant needs to do is to provide one surety who would deposit his international passport and who would be resident within jurisdiction and who would also have a landed property. Now, because the defendant presently has no international passport, the court accepted that position that he lost his international passport when he traveled. The court said that he should apply and get his own international passport again. And once that is done, he will deposit that with the court, and the surety's own will be returned to the surety.
What were the terms? The terms in the administrative bill granted by the court adopted? Yes.
The terms were very simple. In short, in the administrative bill granted to him, initially was on self-recognizance, because he's somebody who is very well known in this country. Later, they wanted him to bring a surety, and he brought a surety. And they wanted him to deposit international passport, and which, according to them, will be released to him whenever the need arises. So that's what it is.
Staying with judicial matters, the Federal Capital Territory High Court has dismissed an application by the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, seeking release from the custody of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. In a ruling delivered on Thursday, Justice Babangida Hassan held that Malami's detention was lawful and backed by a valid court order. Mr. Malami, through his counsel, Suleiman Hassan, had argued that his continued detention during an ongoing EFCC investigation was illegal and violated his constitutional right to personal liberty. However, the EFCC opposed the application, insisting that Malami was being held pursuant to a remand order lawfully obtained from another FCT High Court. Counsel to the Commission, J.S. Okutepa, told the court that the remand order was issued by Justice S.C. Origi in line with provisions of the Administrative Criminal Justice Act, ACJA. Meanwhile, the former Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, has raised concerns over raids carried out by operatives of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission on his offices and residences in Abuja and Kebbi State. The raids were confirmed by Malami's media aide, Mohammed Doka, who said they followed the former AG's public reference to Chapter 9 of the Justice Ayo Salami Judicial Commission of Inquiry report. Malami's camp alleged the operation was intended to seize the document and accused EFCC Chairman Ola Olukoyede of bias, calling for his recusal from any matters involving the former Attorney General. Mr. Malami described the raids as intimidating and retaliatory, questioning their legality and the motive behind them. He also called for the full publication of the Commission's report, insisting that transparency and accountability requires its public release. The EFCC is yet to respond to these allegations. The National Pensions Commission says that 1,053,000 Nigerians received over 577 billion naira through their retirement savings account as part of a pension backlog cleared in 2025. The Director General of the Commission made this known during a media update in Abuja, saying this and several other notable achievements formed key highlights of the 2025 fiscal year for the Commission in its bid to create a sustainable pension scheme backed by prompt payments to retirees. Our correspondent, Sumaya Abubakar, reports.
It was the 2025 PENCOM Media Conference with the theme Pension Revolution Summit, a 365-day scorecard expected to update Nigerians on efforts put in place to establish a workable pension management scheme for Nigerians. The Director General of the National Pension Commission, Omolola Olororaran, says that much has been achieved in the year 2025.
This past year has been defined by bold decisions, structural reforms, and measurable impact. It was structural. It brought together new regulations, stronger supervision, governance reforms, digital transformation, and industry realignment.
Olorunrara highlighted details of a 758 billion naira bond approved by the federal government to clear pension backlogs, giving details with officials of the commission, saying it represented a great milestone for Nigerian pensioners. She commended President Bola Tinubu for matching words with action and fulfilling promises he made to Nigerians.
The pension payment is being run as advantage. Reversal of arrears for payments to pension to retirees from 21 months to 0 waiting time since July 2025. This follows regular releases for appropriated pension funds with monthly salaries by the Federal Ministry of Finance from January 2025.
One of the most historic milestones of this year was the presidential approval and disbursement of 758 billion naira to settle outstanding pension liabilities. This unprecedented intervention sets a clear and powerful signal that Nigeria honors its promises to its workers and retirees. Again, I say we have a talk and do precedent. A promise renewed, though, he is delivering on it.
The National Pension Commission says that 1,053,000 beneficiaries through their retirement savings accounts received the sum of 577,264,960,890 naira, with 387 billion naira earmarked for pension increases. In Abuja, for News Central, Sumaya Abubakar.
The news continues in other parts of Africa. M23 rebels have started withdrawing from Uvira in eastern DR Congo, days after seizing the strategic border city near Burundi. The Rwanda-backed militia captured the city days, taking control of the land border and cutting off Congolese military aid from its neighbor, despite a recent U.S.-brokered peace deal between the Kinshasa and Kigali. Following U.S. condemnation of the offensive as a breach of the accord, M23 announced a unilateral pullout, with troops moving north towards Luvungi. Local residents reported seeing columns of vehicles leaving, raising concerns about security in the city after the withdrawal. We'll continue with our stories in Africa in a moment. Do stay with us. Teenage girls in Sierra Leone face serious risks when seeking to terminate unwanted pregnancies, often turning to traditional healers, a choice that can lead to lasting physical and emotional harm. Abortion remains illegal in the country except when the mother's life is at risk, leaving women with few safe options. A bill to decriminalize abortion, introduced in Parliament last year, has made little progress. Rights activists say strong opposition from religious communities is largely responsible for the delay. Unsafe termination continues to threaten the health and lives of women, underscoring the urgent need for legal reforms and accessible reproductive health care in Sierra Leone.
So at that time, the baby was up to 20 months. So you know, able, I didn't come, you know, able for puller. So my friend go for take me back and go to me back to our mommy. Where the mommy go put the breast, he boil them. He give me for la drinker. So all let's me be the morning, the heart all let's. So in the next morning now I can be bleed. Yes, it can come out. So from then till now I begin experience this belly hearts. Yes, belly be the morning continuously. I've been like 2 weeks at the nest. 2 weeks. So from then, after I don't use that medicine, everything don't clear. Any month now, I say for see me period, I go through that pain day.
It will be very difficult for a girl who is under 18 to be carrying pregnancy and attending classes at the same time. So our culture does not favor it, religion does not also favor it, and the community in which they find themselves. So they will always seek backyard abortion. They will take it to the dark worlds, and it's dangerous, very, very dangerous. Sometimes it's even cost their lives.
President Donald Trump has defended his economic record while blaming former President Joe Biden for high living costs in a national address marking nearly 1 year since his return to office. Speaking from the White House, Trump said he inherited a mess, but insisted fuel and grocery prices are now declining. He acknowledged voter frustration over affordability, an issue Republicans say could shape the 2026 midterm elections. In a surprise announcement, the president unveiled a $1,776 warrior dividend bonus for about 1.45 million U.S. military personnel to be funded through tariff revenues. President Trump said the figure symbolizes America's founding year. He also predicted a major economic upswing in 2026 when the United States will host the World Cup.
We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. Soon we will host the World Cup and the Olympics, both of which I got. But most importantly, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. There could be no more fitting tribute to this epic milestone than to complete the comeback of America that began just 1 year ago. Starting on day one, I took immediate action to stop the invasion of our southern border. For the past 7 months, 0 illegal aliens have been allowed into our country, a feat which everyone said was absolutely impossible. Do you remember when Joe Biden said that he needed Congress to pass legislation to help close the border?
EU leaders have started a high-stakes summit in Brussels today aiming to unlock frozen Russian assets to fund war-torn Ukraine. Belgium faces mounting pressure to lift its blockade amid fears of Moscow's retaliation over funds held by Euroclear. The plan proposes using 210 billion euros in frozen assets to loan 90 billion euros to Kiev over 2 years, with repayment contingent on Russia paying reparations. With Ukraine's cash crunch looming by April and US-led peace talks intensifying, officials are pushing for a breakthrough as backup funding options remain limited and EU unity hangs in the balance. Nigeria's failure to qualify for the 2026 FIFA World Cup is a major financial setback for the Super Eagles and the Nigeria Football Federation. FIFA's expanded tournament guarantees each qualified team at least $10.5 million in prize and preparation fees. That's about 15.5 billion naira now lost to Nigeria. Historically, Nigeria had been capable of reaching the round of 16. Nigeria could realistically have earned over $16.5 million, with deeper runs offering up to $50 million for champions. Beyond prize money, absence also means lost sponsorships, broadcast exposure, and player valuation gains. Missing back-to-back World Cups weakens Nigeria's football finances and global sporting influence. And Nigeria's electricity sector debt is projected to rise to 6.4 trillion naira by the end of 2025, up from the about 6 trillion naira reported in October, reflecting a 6.25% increase driven by unresolved legacy obligations and a monthly funding shortfall of roughly 200 billion naira. Power generation companies warned that the debt accumulated between 2015 and 2025 is crippling operations and limiting capacity despite efforts to keep the national grid stable. Experts say the liquidity crisis spans the entire value chain from gas supply to distribution. While the government interventions and bond issuances have helped avert collapse, analysts argue that the trajectory is fiscally unsustainable without deeper reforms, improved transparency, and credible implementation of long-term sector restructuring. And that's it on the 6th edition for today. Here's a recap of the major stories. We told you that Nigerian government had ordered the reopening of 47 unity schools closed over security concerns, and that a court has upheld the administrative bail for former Labour Minister Dr. Ngige, setting fresh conditions. We also told you that M23 rebels were pulling out days after seizing strategic Democratic Republic of Congo border city of Uvira. Let's hear from you. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on your screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm Neota Igbe.